I'm in Korea, if you can't tell by this beautiful background. I'm actually currently staying at a traditional Hanok guest house. As you can see, it's gorgeous here and it feels like I'm in a K-drama. Like I need to add some slow motion shots and sad music, but now all I need is the love interest. It is very beautiful and healing here, which is exactly what I needed after the chaos of launch season, which if you missed the news, we launched the 2024 doodle planner, stickers, pencil cases. It was a lot. I actually launched when I was in Japan last week, and I also had food poisoning that same night, so it was a very chaotic time. But I'm okay now, we made it through. Fall weather is definitely hitting here in Seoul. It's getting chilly and the cozy vibes are happening, and I'm personally ready for it. I love fall. I am a certified autumn girly. I'll admit it, you know, I love me a good spooky season. I love the fall weather. There's just something about the crisp air and the seasons, and just suits journaling so well. And I love the fashion and I love everything about fall. So I think I'm ready to plan a little bit. I actually, as of right now, have no clue what theme I'm gonna do, but I did just want to say right off the bat, thank you to anyone who supported the ShopAmandaRachLee launch. As I mentioned, it was very overwhelming, but every year you guys really make it worth it whenever I see your guys' message that our products help you guys out every day, because that's truly just my goal. At the end of the day, is just to make products that inspire you guys to be creative and productive on a daily basis. And if we're able to do that just for a few people, then my mission is complete. Also, I saw a lot of people asking about digital planners. They're coming soon, don't worry. We just needed to get through this launch first before we thought about digital. Don't worry, for all my digital people, it's coming soon. I think that's it. I'm gonna toss it over to voiceover Amanda now, who will take it away. I just wanted to do this intro in this beautiful setting. So for this month's setup, I'm doing a theme that I've been meaning to do for quite a while now. It has been an idea in my head, but the timing just kind of never worked out because I always had other themes that I wanted to do instead of it, but I always stored it in the back of my brain because I knew I would do it eventually, and I was just waiting for the perfect timing. And this month it just worked perfectly because of my Asia trips. So this month's theme is actually inspired by the classic blue and white porcelain pottery. You guys definitely know the style of pottery that I'm talking about. It's that crisp white background with the cobalt blue pigment, and it's very ornate with the designs, very beautiful. I associate this style of pottery with like Chinese Ming Dynasty ceramics, partially because those are my roots, and I actually like grew up seeing a lot of this style of ceramics in my household. But I looked into it, and this style of pottery is actually thought to originate from Iraq and Islamic pottery. A lot of it was brought over to Asia once the blue glazes were developed by ancient Mesopotamians to imitate lapis lazuli, which is a very highly prized gemstone. So this cobalt blue was kind of seen as something that is very expensive and luxurious. Anyway, that was just a little background history lesson because I thought it was interesting when I looked it up because I didn't know that. But I always thought this style of pottery was really beautiful with all of the designs, and that's where I took my inspiration from. So I'm just building out basically a vase design on my bullet journal, and I'm pretty much just using 1 or 2 markers. The marker that I used was this blue Tombow, which I'll put the color code for the marker that I'm using down below, and then just a Sakura Pigma Micron, and that was it. For the entire setup, I only used these, and I thought it turned out beautiful. Like, this blue is so vibrant and bold and in your face, but still elegant. And there's actually a reason why I'm using these 2 markers slash fine liners instead of just 1, because yes, technically if we're going just based off of thickness, I could have done this whole spread using the Tombow dual brush pen because there's the thin bullet side that I'm using, that you see me use right now. But I wanted to play around with something fun. So Tombow dual brush pens are actually water soluble and Sakura Pigma Microns are not. So that means that if you add water to Tombow dual brush pen, they'll blend and almost look a little bit watercolory. So what I've noticed in these Asian ceramic designs is that sometimes some of the designs are filled in with this sort of watercolory inky look to it, depending on the design, and I wanted to experiment with that. So you'll see me do that later, but basically on the designs that I knew I didn't want to blend or smudge out, I would use the Sakura Pigma Micron because that one is waterproof. So that's kind of why I had these 2 markers going on, and then just kind of using the Tombow dual brush pen when I wanted a bolder look or when I knew I wanted to blend it out a little bit more. Also to fill it in like you see me doing here. So with these designs, I know when you first look at these pottery designs, everything looks so intricate and ornate, and it's almost like there's no way I could do that, because that's how I felt when I was looking at them. But then when I truly like sat down and analyzed some photos of these pots and vases, I noticed some very similar patterns and designs amongst all of them, and when you break it down into simple shapes or just like certain sections, it actually was pretty simple. So I started at the top with some lines, some more geometric lines as you see, and then kind of like a scalloped design. They use that a lot. But the one that they used a lot was this sort of swirly design. And to do that, I did a lot of like S shapes, kind of looping around. It is kind of very reminiscent of the Art Nouveau swirls and sort of like French swirls from like art back in the day. If you guys know the references that I'm talking about, I've used these references in previous bullet journal setup videos before, so it is very similar to that, but I think the way that the patterns are built out is unique to these sort of pottery designs. So what I did was I just basically pulled up a bunch of images of pots and vases that I really thought were pretty, and then kind of looked at the individual stripes of designs that I liked from it and kind of made my own designs from there. And something that I noticed amongst a lot of these is that there's always this one large section of very floral, curly designs like you see me drawing here. So I left a large section for this part of the pattern, and this is where you'll see me really utilize that water soluble versus waterproof marker thing. So I started out by drawing a lot of the flowers and using the Tombow on the edges, and then you'll see later what I do. But then using my Sakura Pigma Micron to draw out a lot of these curlicues, adding leaves, and really just going with the flow. What I've noticed with some of these ornate floral designs is that there's not like really a repetitive pattern. They kind of just fill in a lot of the empty spaces with these curlicues. So that makes it really easy to recreate because you can't really make a mistake. I basically just kind of went with the flow. If there was any empty spaces, I would add a curlicue or a leaf. But kind of started out by placing those large flowers where I thought would fit best, and then you can kind of go to all the smaller spaces. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. And I actually really enjoyed this process because you guys know I love winging it with my doodles, and this was just kind of perfect for me. So it was very fun for me to kind of see how the drawing would build out and see how the pattern grew and grew. And I think it turned out pretty well, if I do say so myself. I think being in Asia has definitely inspired me a lot with art. Just being around Eastern art and architecture, it's so different from Western art, and you guys know I've done a lot of themes and drawings based on Western art history movements before. Like I've done Art Nouveau, art like Bauhaus, mid-century modern, pop art. So a lot of Western art movements because that's what I've been most familiar with in terms of my education. But just being surrounded by more Eastern art influences has been so inspiring to me, especially because they're kind of like my roots, my ancestors, you know, maybe my ancestors would be proud of me for doing this. But it's definitely very different, and it's cool to gain inspiration from different parts of the world and different art styles. One thing that differentiates Eastern art from Western art is Eastern Asian art, there's definitely a very intense focus on craftsmanship, details, and the types of materials used. So I think that's why I really took my time with this cover page. It's a lot more detailed than normally I would go for, but it was very meditative, and I really enjoyed the way, like the whole process and the way things turned out. Anyway, as you can see, something cool is happening on the paper right now. I'm actually just using a brush with straight up water. This may look like I'm using watercolor paints, but I'm just using straight up water and blending out the Tombow ink because, like I mentioned, it's water soluble. So if you put some water over it, it kind of blends together and it kind of creates this inky watercolory look. which I think was perfect for this theme because that's basically, I think, what they do on the pots. And I think it like adds such a nice touch. It's kind of like the second color to this color palette, even though it's technically the same color. So, you know, we have like the deep blue and then now this watercolory lighter inky blue. And then at the bottom, I just finished by adding more of these scallop designs. So I've noticed that they kind of frame the designs at the bottom with horizontal lines and these like scalloped patterns. And I know some of my patterns are not perfectly symmetrical or equal, but you know, we're trying our best. And also I didn't want to break out like the ruler and perfectly measure everything. I'm sure maybe some of the ancient artists who did do some of these designs were more meticulous about it, but for the most part I would use the dot grids on the page to measure out certain things, but if things were a little bit lopsided I wouldn't get too intense about it. And then going back in over top of the inky watercolory parts just to re-darken some of the lines that got a little bit lighter once adding water. And there is the cover design. I think it looks beautiful. I literally think this could go on the outside of like a bowl or a big ceramic pot. I'm like so happy with the way this turned out. It was so fun for me. And then on the left side of the spread, this is where I'm doing my monthly calendar. So I decided to do just a mini monthly calendar on a half page just because, you know, launch is over. We are gearing up for the digital doodle planner launch, so things are going to pick back up near the end of the month and be a little bit more busy for me, but for the most part I'm just recharging and gearing up for the holiday season, which I'm so excited for. I've already started watching some of my favorite Christmas movies. I know I'm insane, but you know, Mariah would be proud of me. Okay, and then I'm just putting a section at the bottom for events. Oh, by the way, the lettering that I used was this very elegant cursive font, obviously to match the vibes of the illustrations, and I think it worked really well. And then just adding some more border doodles around the monthly calendar using the curly Q designs at the top. I think that's like a very good motif to use all throughout this theme or setup if you're going to recreate it, because they're really quick and easy to draw and it looks more complicated than it actually is. So you guys saw, you just kind of start out with the big main swirls and then you can add all these little leaves and sproglets and swirls kind of jumping out from each of the larger swirls. Moving on to my next spread, which is my habit tracker. So as usual, this is the habit tracker that you guys have been seeing for a while, but I actually didn't make a mood tracker this month, and I have been a little bit more chill and lenient on bullet journaling. I think this year has just been a very interesting year for me, so you know, I want to do what feels best in terms of journaling, and sometimes that is not creating a certain type of spread, even though it's something that I've always done. And I think letting go of mood trackers has been that for me, and also just being a little bit more relaxed about it, because I think a lot of times when I made these videos there would be a lot of pressure with bullet journaling and showing you guys new fun things or unique things and putting it out on time, but I've really tried to be kinder to myself this year, which you guys can probably tell based on how late these videos go up these days. But I think in terms of like my mental health, it's been a lot better, kind of letting go of all of that journaling pressure. So for this habit tracker, it's very simple. I just have 2 columns of these mini calendars, and I'm using the water to fill in the headers of the calendar, and then just filling in the empty spaces with those design doodles at the bottom, I believe. Let's wait and see what I do. I honestly don't remember. Oh yes, the bottom here. So you can see I'm starting out with just simple horizontal lines and then building out those scallop designs and adding more and more details on top. So again, it may look really complicated when you see the end results, but if you really break down the designs and start from the big picture and then kind of work your way in, like see, I added those dots and then now I'm filling it in, and in the end it all kind of comes together. So really trust the process with this one. I always say trust the process, but for these types of doodles, I really think that is definitely the case. In the end, it all really comes together. After I finished decorating, I just filled in the habits that I want to track this month, my usual health-related ones, but I also have meditating, stretching, and then also social, because I want to push myself to say yes to more social events, because I've realized that once I go, I do feel great, but it's just kind of getting myself to do that is the hard part. So here you can see I cut the page in half because I'm creating a Dutch door spread, which I haven't created in a while, but this one's kind of like, I don't know, it's like a half Dutch store. It's actually the weekly spread for this month because I wanted to create a weekly tasks sidebar, but also still give myself more space every day for planning out certain things. So in this case, I get like a full half spread, but then I also save space because instead of writing out my appointments or my meetings in that daily box, I'm adding it to the sidebar. It is a bit different from Dutch door spreads that I've done in the past because I would use full 4 pages, but in this case, because I only had habit tracker on one side, I didn't want to like skip a page just to go to and leave it empty just to go to a new page, so I'm just kind of utilizing the pages the best way that I can. So here you can see I messed up a little bit and smudged the water, so I'm just painting over it with my white Uniposca paint pen. It didn't cover it completely, but it kind of did the job, so you gotta embrace your mistakes. But just outlining all of the boxes using my Tombow dual brush pen, creating that like thick bold line, I think really brought everything together. And then for the headers of each day, that's where I used the water brush to fill in those little boxes as well. And then just to tie in all of those designs in between the days, that's where I added the little curly Q designs and floral designs to mimic the style of pottery. Finally, to finish things off, after waiting for the water ink to dry, I used the blue fine liner to write out the days of the week and the numbers in the little header boxes. I kind of messed up the number there, but I went back in with my handy paint pen and fixed it up a little bit. But because of the layout of this format, my weekend to-do list is bunched into one box, but in the daily sidebar events list, it's separated, so it kind of works out for me. Alright guys, here's my November 2023 bullet journal flip through inspired by Asian ceramics. It's a very short one. I honestly wasn't sure if I was going to do a setup this month because of launch, but that's how it ended up. Finally, again, I just wanted to say thank you to anyone who supported our launch. It really means a lot to me and my team, and we worked so hard for it this whole year, and I'm glad it paid off. But I think that's pretty much it. So I hope you guys have a cozy, lovely autumn season, and sending my love to you guys, and keep doodling. Bye everyone.